Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're a returning listener, I want to say a big thank you for your continued support. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, welcome. It's great to have you on board. So without further ado, let's get started on today's story. Ireland Crimes and Mysteries is presented by GoLoud, Ireland's leading audio publisher and the home of Irish podcasts. Find new episodes on the podcast first on the GoLoud app and on your favourite podcast platform. Back by popular demand, we have Ciaran McConnell. Welcome, Ciaran. Ciaran is from the Cliff's Edge podcast. I hope you're all listening because it's a fantastic podcast. So Ciaran has kindly said he'd come on, and we're going to chat today about Antoinette Smith.
Yeah, no, thanks for the introduction, Nules. I don't usually be referred to as back by popular demand, so.
Well, I can tell you now, all my listeners nearly, they're always like, when you having Ciaran back. So I said I'll give them a good start to the new year and have Ciaran back.
Thanks very much. So happy New Year and all that, I suppose we should say.
And many happy returns to you and all the listeners, as they say.
Yeah.
So, Antoinette Smith, that is a very interesting case, and I know you know an awful lot about it. So if we can cast our minds, I suppose, back to 1987, we're going right back now to the end of the 80s, and David Bowie was going to be playing in Slane, wasn't he?
Yeah, so 87 now, I was only a baby or whatever, but I get the impression that Ireland was quite a different country than it is now, because obviously it was pre the boom in the 90s, and then it was even before Italia 90 and all that type of thing, yeah. And the Troubles were still going on too.
Yeah, they were in full swing, weren't they? And I suppose Ireland was different in the sense as well. There was a lot of unemployment and immigration and all that kind of stuff. But in the midst of all that, there was Antoinette Smith, who was only 27 years of age, and she had been married very young, hadn't she? And was separated from her husband.
Yeah, so Antoinette, she was born sometime around 1960, so she would have been 27 in 1987. But yeah, she got married in 1979 when she was just 19 years of age. But I guess that wouldn't have been completely out of the norm back then. So she grew up in Crumlin in inner city Dublin, and then when she got married, she moved to Kilmahudra Court with her husband Carl. I think obviously around 1979 when she got married, and then she had two daughters. And yeah, I think at some point her and Carl separated, like, you know, probably married too young or whatever, like, not to speculate too much, but they'd separated by 1987, and I think they were sharing custody of the kids because on the day Antoinette Smith disappeared, she got the bus down to the Nace Road with her two young daughters and dropped them off at Carl's place of work. He was working as a fireman at the time, yeah.
Yeah, and seemingly from what I was reading, their split was amicable. Like, you know, there was no animosity between the two of them, and they did share care of the children, like, you know.
Yeah, see, well, that's what we know is the fact that they were sharing custody of the kids, so you'd imagine it would be amicable based on that. But also in 1987, divorce was illegal, so you had to probably come up with your own separation agreements back then.
Yeah. Right, yeah, I actually didn't think of that. Yeah, divorce hadn't become a thing, so they were still technically married even though they were just separated. But I suppose Antoinette was still a young woman, like, you know, so she was newly separated. She wanted to go out and enjoy herself and have a life, I suppose. You find yourself newly single.
Yeah. I suppose when you touched on her age there, I think it's kind of one of the things that gets lost in Antoinette's story is that how young she was, right? Because when you think of, say, the Fiona Pender case, she's the same age as Fiona Pender and then not too much older than Jojo Dullard, which always like kind of struck me as mad. That's mad. But obviously now she was at a different life phase, like she'd been separated and had two kids. But you see the pictures of her and all, she just looks like a 27-year-old, yeah, pretty young, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose in this day and age, you see people are getting married older now, I suppose, like, you know, so to us it's a kind of a mad, really, in a sense that somebody would be married and separated and have had two children by the age of 27. Like, you know, it's a lot of life experience at such a young age.
Nowadays marriage wouldn't even be on the cards at 27. Like,
no, you're wanting to get your career going and enjoy yourself, basically, you know.
Yeah.
But on that note, I suppose, yeah, she was wanting to get out there and enjoy herself again. And David Bowie was coming to Slane
Yeah, that
that
Saturday,
summer.
the 11th of July, 87, David Bowie was playing Slane. So after she dropped her kids to Carl's place of work, she met one of her friends and they went to a pub in town and then they went to a record shop and bought David Bowie t-shirts, changed into the t-shirts, and then they went back onto O'Connell Street. Now, this is mad to me, but they just walked up to a ticket booth and bought two David Bowie tickets there and then on the day.
That is
Then
kind of
they,
mad.
I don't know if you've been to Slane, but you can get a bus there on the quays up to Slane. Like, it's madness. Like,
Mm,
everyone
yeah,
locked or whatever, carrying on. So, yeah, she went to the concert with her friend and bumped into a few people she knew from Clondalkin at the concert. You know yourself, Ireland, you
yeah.
can't really get away from people, you know.
No,
And
no.
no. And apparently the concert was terrible. I read the reports, they were saying that David Bowie performed really badly at the concert, you know.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
He was going through
That'd be
some
very
crazy alter
disappointing.
ego phase. Yeah,
Huh?
apparently he's going through some mad alter ego phase or something like that. That's what I read. Yeah.
So if anybody was actually at the concert, you can let us know in the comments whether it was
There you
good,
go,
bad,
yeah.
or
But I
indifferent.
presume though, if you're a single mother with two kids, like, to get out is just, it's gonna be a good night, right, isn't it? Get a break.
Absolutely. And it seems like the concert was just part of her day. Like they'd been for pre-drinks or pre-concert
Yeah.
drinks, I suppose you'd say, and got the bus down. And then I think they were coming back then around 11 o'clock or something, wasn't it? They got the bus back to Dublin.
Yeah, because I think the concert finishes about 10 o'clock or something up in Slane. So, yeah, you get the same bus back that you got out. And then they got back to town, dropped off at Parnell Square for about 11 o'clock. And then they went around to a nightclub on Parnell Street. I think it's called Fibber McGee's now. It used to be known as La Mirage. So they stayed in there till about 2 in the morning. And they met two friends in there, two lads from Ballymun. I think one of them actually worked in La Mirage, but they knew these guys anyway, so they stayed in La Mirage till it closed at about two, half two. Went out
Mm,
onto O'Connell Street. I think Antoinette Smith, she had a minor argument with her friend. I think the friend wanted to go home. You know, them long
yeah.
days when you're out in a session, you just probably have enough. Like, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I wasn't there, but I don't think the argument was too severe because the friend gave Antoinette Smith a key to her house where Antoinette was planning to stay over. But anyway, the friend went home and
It
I
was
think Antoinette Smith.
probably it was sorry for interrupting you, Kieran.
No, go ahead.
It was probably just her friend saying, "Come on, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, what are you going to be doing? Everything's closed."
Yeah,
And trying to
exactly.
encourage her to come home. You would assume
And you're
anyway.
right there because that time back then, I think the last orders in nightclubs probably was around half two in the morning. So pretty much everything would have been closed as well. Yeah. And then when you go out that early, like, sometimes the
Yeah,
day does end and you have to get home, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it has to
Yeah.
end at some stage, doesn't it? So, like, the friend obviously then headed home. And
Mm.
what did the two? Because I heard reports that they left the nightclub with them, with her friend and Antoinette and the two lads. Did they go home
Yeah.
as well, or did they stay on with Antoinette?
So I think when Antoinette was having the little argument with her friend, the bouncer witnessed this as well. So apparently
Mm.
she then stayed with the two guys for a bit on O'Connell Street. They got a taxi then back to Ballymun where they were from. And I know I don't mean I'm accusing these guys or anything like that, but they
No,
must have had
no.
a fairly good alibi because I'm sure they would have been looked into. They were two men that were last seen with it, but for whatever reason, they've never been considered suspects or persons of interest, so their alibi must
Yeah.
have checked out. But yeah, so they would have seen Antoinette as they were getting into their taxi, seen Antoinette walking past the Gresham Hotel on O'Connell Street, down past Cleary's Clock, and then
Mm.
towards O'Connell Bridge, and that was the last confirmed sighting of Antoinette, and that was about half two, quarter to three in the morning. She was still
Right.
carrying her black Texaco bag as well with her, yeah.
Right. And after that, then nothing. Like, you'd want, but like it's still, and I'm not obviously blaming Antoinette. Like, she was young, and we've all done like silly things when we were young. We're just lucky enough to be here to talk about it. But like, to be left on your own in the middle of Dublin city, like, at that hour of the night or morning, I suppose you could say, at that stage, like, you would have hoped that you would have decided to go back home with the friend,
That's
but she
it.
didn't, obviously, and that was the last sighting of her.
Well, it's at
So,
that point she becomes very vulnerable, right? She has no guardians there at all. I don't mean she's a kid
absolutely.
that needs a guardian, but your friends will look out for
No,
you or whatever when you're out. And then she's probably a bit drunk or tired or whatever from the
of
day, like,
course.
and then yeah,
Yeah.
she becomes very vulnerable at that point, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there was a lot of revelers around after the concert as well. Still, hanging around, coming out of pubs and nightclubs and what have you. So, like, it could have been basically anybody when you think about it. But
Yeah.
when was it then kind of noticed that, like, she was obviously meant to go back to the friend's house? When did it start to become apparent that she wasn't at her friend's house or gone home?
Yeah, quite quickly, which is understandable. So the arrangement she had with Carl was that she would take the kids back off him the next day. I think it was 12 or half 12 in the afternoon, something early. So she didn't show up at that, like, and then I think Carl, in fairness to him, like, if the ma doesn't show up for the kids, right, she was a reliable, good mother, so there's something up,
Mm.
you know.
Yes,
It doesn't, he
absolutely.
was right to cop on there that there was something going on, like, because when the ma doesn't show up, like, it could be 10, 15 minutes, that's fair enough, but like, in an hour or two goes by, he
Yeah.
knew there was something up. So I think he went and contacted her friend. The friend said she didn't come back to the house. They went down to the Garda station and he tried to report it over several days and basically it fell on deaf ears, yeah. And then he went
Really?
down on, yeah, shocking, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he went down on the Tuesday again with the friend, and the guards asked him to bring back a picture of Antoinette Smith the next day. So he
Mm.
brought the picture back the Wednesday, and then the missing person report was officially filed, yeah. But
Right.
from all
And
the
and
books, even then, Alan Bailey, he's an ex-guard, he wrote a book and he said that from Sunday, Carl exhausted every lead, but for whatever reason, it fell on deaf ears, yeah. Shocking.
that is shocking. Like, it is like a young,
Yeah,
as
'cause
you
once
said,
the
a young
man doesn't show
vulnerable
up for the
girl.
kids, to me, that's it. There's something up, like, end of
Absolutely.
story. Yeah,
Absolutely. And especially when she hadn't even gone back to the friend's house. And the fact that she had been on her own in the city that night, I mean, they're all kind of
yeah,
red flags, if
big
in
time. Yeah.
my opinion anyway. But when did the guards start to take it seriously then? Or did.
Well, from what I've read, once the missing person report was filed, they did start to take it serious then, and they put out bulletins and
Mm.
like news reports and so on, but nothing came back. No.
No witnesses at all came forward
Yeah.
saying they'd seen her after that time. So you fast forward then, was it 9 months, I think, was it? Where,
Yeah, 9 months to the 3rd of April 1988. It was actually Easter Sunday. It was
mm,
a family of five. They were up in Glendale Mountain having a picnic, and there was two girls and one boy. I think the boy was only 8 or something, and he was hiding and hide and seek or whatever. And then he hid behind some sort of a collapsed bog. And when his sisters came to look for him, yeah, they found the body.
oh my God. So they didn't do a good job at hiding her, basically.
Well, from what I read, they had actually dug the grave, but there was loads of rain that winter, and it made the side of the grave subside, which exposed the body. Yeah, so it could be a weather
Oh
event
God,
that
those
led to
poor
the body.
children. That wasn't a
Yeah.
very nice thing for them to see. So
No, so
they,
then the dad got them in the car or whatever, and then they drove to the nearest Garda station. Yeah, and they brought the state pathologist up. You know that guy, Professor
Dr.
Harbison.
John Harbison, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, so he examined the body and that, and then they found the friend's key in the pocket of Antoinette's jeans, and it matched the door. And I think then they used dental records to fully confirm that it was Antoinette Smith. Yeah,
Yeah, because after 9 months, like, and
yeah,
I suppose was she still wearing the David Bowie t-shirt?
yeah. So the apparently the lettering on the t-shirt had faded away, but they were able to take the t-shirt and put it in some solution, and then the letters came back up and it said Bowie Slane 87 on it. Yeah,
Yeah, so by a process of elimination, back in those days, obviously DNA wasn't a thing, so they were able to decipher that it was an Antoinette. Um,
yeah. They had to use the other things, the dental records, and
mm,
also I suppose once the key matched the friend's door, right, that would
yeah,
be quite a strong
yeah.
indication. Yeah.
So that was obviously devastating for her family, but at least they now knew where she was. But now we had to find out what happened to her. So where did the investigation go from there? Like, I'm presuming Carl, as always, the husband or boyfriend is initially the suspect.
Yeah. But I think as we were discussing this before, the way the circumstances like around the crime and how Antoinette went missing and stuff, it seems I don't think he was
Mm.
ever considered a suspect. Like it just doesn't make sense,
Yeah,
right?
because like she was last seen in the city on her own, and as you had said to me prior to recording, like they had two daughters, and one of them was 7 at the time. So if she had got home and something had happened, the child would have obviously heard or what have you. But as you said, Carol then wasn't. I mean, that's a very kind of extenuating circumstances that she would have got all the way. How would she have got home? There would have had to been witnesses of her maybe getting the taxi or like at that hour of the morning. She's hardly going to walk. I'm presuming that's a bit of a distance from O'Connell Street.
It's walking, yeah, you'd still be walking the next day, yeah. It would be too far. Like, it doesn't, yes. And that's another thing. There's nobody ever to come forward to say that she, that the taxi or whatever brought her back to Clondalkin that night. Nothing like that.
So we have to think that she met somebody in the city. Unfortunately, I mean, you're never in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like if you're there, you're entitled to be there. But I suppose that's the old saying, isn't it? You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, met the wrong person or persons.
Yeah. It's what we were kind of saying, like the fact that she was isolated, maybe a bit drunk or whatever. And the main thing is by herself, it just makes her vulnerable to somebody like that who will be out looking for a victim, basically. Like, it's an unfortunate thing. But I think it was very, because the body had lain in the bog for 9 months, so it was very hard to gain any forensic evidence or anything like that. I don't even think they could actually give an official cause of death.
Right, okay. And what state was the body in? Like, was there anything, was she tied up or?
Yeah, so her hands were bound with her bra, and then there was 2 plastic bags placed over her head. The underneath one was tightly knotted, but as they said, they couldn't confirm if that was the cause of death. But Professor Harbison did say if the bags were placed on when she was alive, that would be the cause of death, yeah.
Of course, yeah. God, the poor woman. That's terrifying, really, to think about.
It is true. And then the bra thing, I suppose, there's probably a bit of, not evidence, but like you can look at it 2 ways. You can say, okay, these people were completely opportunistic, that they didn't bring anything with them and they weren't prepared. But also, on the other side, you could say that means they're highly prepared, that they're forensically aware. Because if you bring rope to a crime scene, that's your rope and you've bought it, it's attached to you somewhere along the lines. Whereas the bra, for example, you've no actual attachment to that. So you don't know what way to look at that one. I've heard people say, oh, it just proves they're opportunistic or whatever. But you could also say it proves they're prepared.
And if they were wearing gloves or whatever, then to tie her up, like, there's no, for now, for like now that DNA is a thing, there's no way they could even check the bra for DNA.
People were like, there was forensic. I know, like, it's a bit of a stupid thing to say, but there was forensic back then, like, and even back further, like where they like examine threads and fibers or whatever they'd examine. So people would have some forensic awareness, I would think. Some people, well, if you're up to that type of horrible stuff,
yeah. But as you said, then the body was in the bog for so long that all that was probably destroyed. So
actually, ironically, they've done studies on bogs, and sometimes bogs will actually preserve sometimes evidence. But I think the body was just there for so long that Now I have read somewhere that they were able to take some forensic samples from the T-shirt, so I don't know what that means.
Okay. Yeah. And I suppose the fact as well that the bog was so wet as well, because as you said, there had been awful weather, so that wouldn't have helped with maintaining the body.
Nothing destroys forensic evidence worse than water,
Absolutely. So once they found her body and all that, where did the investigation go from there then, Ciaran?
Yeah, so they put out, like, obviously more appeals, and I suppose the appeals are more specific. Like, you could say Antoinette was found in the mountains or whatever. So I don't know which one of these guys came forward first, but there was a taxi man that came forward, and he said that on the night of Saturday, the 11th of July, into the next morning or whatever, he picked up 2 men and a woman on Westmoreland Street and drove them to basically the centre of Rathfarnham, dropped them off at the Yellow House pub. Now, obviously, the pub was closed at night time, and he reckoned that they weren't romantically involved, but that they were familiar with each other, he thought, by the way they spoke, and it seemed that they were planning to go to a party in Rathfarnham, He said the 2 blokes, one was tall, one was average height or whatever, and they were a bit, like, rowdy, and they started saying to the taxi man, what would you do if we robbed you, type of thing,
Okay.
But he said he remembered that one of them was so tall that his knees kept digging into the back of his seat,
Okay. And did he say that the woman looked like Antoinette?
Yeah, what he said, he could remember the David Bowie T-shirt, and then I remember I mentioned the Alan Bailey book, the guard that wrote the book on Operation Trace. Yeah, he was saying that Antoinette, she had a tooth on the one of her teeth was quite prominent on the side of her mouth, and he was saying that's how the taxi man could recall that it was Antoinette Smith.
Right. So there's a good chance she was in Rathfarnham then. And any other witnesses after that once they got dropped off?
Yeah, there's a second witness now. I think he's taken even more serious because this guy was up at I think it was 5:30, 6 in the morning out walking his dogs. So you know them type of fellas, they're
Yes, yeah,
usually on
yeah.
the ball.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, so he was out walking his dog in a place called Crewa Wood. It would be about a mile from Glendew Mountain where Antoinette was found, and I think this was a bit over the mountain, the wood is. So
Mm.
on the Sunday morning, which would be the morning after the night Antoinette was seen in Dublin, he was walking up through a trail through Crewa Wood, and some bloke started walking down the trail towards him. And as he put it, he goes, he looked out of place. He didn't look like he was up there hiking or anything like that. He wasn't dressed for it. And as they went past, you know, when you're out in the woods, the dog walker
Yeah.
went to say hello. He said your man completely turned his face away and then kept walking down the trail. So he got a bit worried because he remembered that his car was the only car in the car park. So when he turned around to follow the guy, another guy came out of the woods and joined him,
Okay.
and the two of them started walking down the trail. And he said the dog walker said he knew that they were aware of him, but at some point they disappeared off into the woods. You know, but it was the Sunday, the day after Antoinette Smith went missing. Yeah, the morning.
Right. So they didn't go
So
near
about
the
three
car
hours.
park. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 6 a.m. and she was last seen in town at roughly 3. So it's only 3 hours after she was last seen, give or take.
Right. So she could have actually potentially have been still alive inside in the woods at that stage.
Yeah, there's so many things you can kind of think of there that, and each one of them is very disturbing, right? But
Mm.
I racked my brains about this one, and like this is another thing about Ireland back then. I just thought were the two fellas gay because it was actually illegal to be gay in Ireland back then. As shocking
Yeah.
as that is, one thing I thought of, and then were they maybe doing drugs or something up there? But then why would they hide their face to the dog walker and not to say hello? It's not as if they're doing drugs when he seen them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that is odd. Like, it's like they didn't want to be identified.
Yeah, and as I said, you know, blokes like that are out at that hour out walking their dogs. They're usually on the ball, so he was taken
Mm.
serious. Yeah, he just kind
Yeah.
of got a feeling there was something up with these guys. And then, like the taxi story, nobody's ever came forward to offer an explanation for these events. Anyway,
And like, has that led anywhere? It hasn't led anywhere though, that particular
no,
witness.
the only lead I ever really heard on the case was that there was two blokes that were living in shared accommodation in Rathfarnham or something that were questioned, and one of them had been to the David Bowie concert that night, but there was apparently nothing ever to tie them to the crime. No.
Right. Okay. So did the case go cold then? Like,
Well, I think basically they were the only two leads that came forward. There was another thing about a guy that got picked up in Rathfarnham in the early hours of the morning looking quite dishevelled, and he told the taxi man that his car had broken down and he got a lift to the Walkinstown roundabout. Now, that
mm.
could be anything.
Well, it could, yeah. I mean, Dublin's a big place, and yeah, it could have been anybody coming home after a night out
That
kind
was
of
it. There
thing.
was only ever 3 witness reports, so to speak, ever released to the public on this case, and that was them, yeah.
It's unbelievable, really, when you think about it, isn't it? For such a big place, and obviously there was a lot of people around that night with the concert, and I'm sure it was a weekend, and Dublin
Yeah.
would be rocking, I suppose.
Even if you think about it, even up in Glendew in the summertime, there were plenty of people out walking or doing hiking and stuff. Like,
Mm.
it's the middle of the summer, so
Yeah, and was it a very isolated place where the remains were found? Like, was it easy accessible?
I think it was about half a mile in off Military Road. And back then, there was only, I don't know if it's still the same actually, there was only really kind of 2 roads you could take out to where Antoinette was found. And one of them was Military Road, and that leads into Rathfarnham, I think it is. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
then, yeah, so
But,
that does
no,
tie
it's
in with
quite
her being
open.
seen. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it is though quite open, so you would have to think if someone brought the body up there, or 2 people or whatever, it would have to be at night time. Like it would seem very
Mm,
risky to do it during the day, but who knows?
yeah, yeah, and like when I was reading up on Antoinette and where she was found in that, like that's what kind of dawned on me. I said it must have been. It's definitely a two-person job because the place does seem remote and it's like a bog, obviously uneven surface. Trying to carry a body, dead weight, basically.
Also, I suppose going into bogland, like if someone falls into a bog, right, they're going to have to be rescued. It seems like the type of thing you'd be
Yeah,
better off going onto a bog with 2 people, right? But then it could be someone that just has knowledge of bogs as well.
yeah, yeah,
But either
yeah,
way, you'd have to have some knowledge. I don't think you'd be going out walking on bogland in the middle of the night without having some sort of knowledge of
yeah.
them, right?
Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking then is, like, as you were saying earlier, at 3 o'clock in the morning was the last time she was seen, and these men were seen at 6 o'clock. There was a very short, even if it wasn't these men, there was a very short period, kind of a window where you still had darkness. It was July, so it's bright early. So it all must have happened, whatever happened to poor Antoinette must have happened very quickly. To get out there, to obviously kill her and bury her. You're not talking about a lot of darkness. You didn't have much time for darkness, before it started getting bright, before you had your walkers.
Yeah, and yourself in the summer at that time, it never really gets properly dark, right? Because the sun goes down at 10 and it's back up for like 4,
Yeah, exactly. So it probably wasn't early bright by the time they got out to the mountainside.
So you wonder if there's something more sinister that he just didn't see their car, or was parked somewhere else, or
was she brought up there that day? Was she kept somewhere for days on end? You don't know. It didn't have to be that night that she was buried.
No, and then I think I've seen a few guards say this over the years or whatever. It doesn't seem like she'd go up there willingly,
No, but who would? If we were with strangers, or what would be your reason for going up there? A woman on her own, you could say, basically.
That was it. There was never really any leads, and I think, in fairness to the guards, it's Bray Guard Station that are handling the case, but every year they're constantly putting out appeals and all that. So I just get the impression the guards have very little to go on here, and then also that 9-month gap in between when Antoinette disappeared and her body being found, that's it. For the guards, the investigation, there's just so much time in between there for people to get false alibis, get out of Dodge or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, the case is stalled at that. After you would be delighted, in the sense, obviously not delighted, but the fact that her body was found, it would give you hope. It would push the investigation forward. But in this case, it hasn't really garnered anything new. So the case is basically at the same stage now as it was back then, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because there's never been arrests and no mentions ever of persons of interest. So that would mean you would think there's nothing really in her victimology going on where there's any suspect at all. Because you see in a lot of the other cases that guards will put pressure on the suspects once they're kind of sure of things, or they think they're on the right track. But here there's nothing like that at all, no. And then I think in 2013 they did the cold crime review team looked at the case and all that, so
and
nothing, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, it's desperately sad. So I suppose all we can say, really, because as you said, it hasn't moved on from there, and there's 2 little girls that were left without their mother growing up. If anybody does know anything, we'd be appealing to them, no matter how small the information you have is. If you did see anybody that night wearing a David Bowie t-shirt, or
that's when nearly every appeal they make, the guards always say the same thing: relationships and associations may have changed over the years. So maybe they know a little more than we're letting on. Yeah. And it's also, and you're right, the children are robbed of a mother and all that, but also Antoinette, we go back to, she wasn't that old. She was only born in 1960, so I have to say she wasn't that old, because she's the same age as my mother, but she'd only be in her 60s now, Antoinette, she still had plenty of life to live,
And being in your 60s today is still young, you know what I mean? She'd have had a lot of life to live, she'd still have been a relatively young woman. And
but despite the fact it's nearly 40 years now since she disappeared from O'Connell Street or whatever,
Yeah, and the longer these cases go on, obviously, the harder it is. And I'm always saying, especially with a lot of the vanishing triangle, as you well know, if you don't have a body, or a crime scene, but in this case, they have the body, but they don't, as far as we know, have the crime scene, but they had the body, and they're still not able to, through no fault of their own.
You see in some cases where they're all they need is the body to press charges, but it's not the case, unfortunately, in Antoinette's case now. Even though they have the body, there seems to be very little to go on here. It's such a hard case for the police, because there's no there doesn't seem to be anything in her background,
Yeah, I was going to say that to you, actually. There was nobody that she had an argument with, or that was annoyed with her in any way. There was nothing like that came out in her past.
She's just a mom too, going about looking after her kids. Why would she have any enemies? I know that's very on the superficial, but it's hard. It's hard to come up with a motive. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's literally nothing. So that's why we were kind of anxious to do this case today, because it is so stalled, and I'm sure her family would love to get the answers, even if it is 40 odd years later, and find out what happened to Antoinette.
Yeah, so if anybody does have any information, it's great. Garda Station that are handling it, and they said that any information that comes forward will be treated sensitively.
Absolutely. Ciaran, thanks so much for covering Antoinette's story, which is, I knew you were a mind of information on it, and that's why I wanted to have you on.
There's not that much info on it.
No, but we have covered what is out there, and as we said, if anybody does know anything or know of somebody that might know something, please contact Bray Garda Station. Thanks to Ciaran for coming on, and hopefully he'll be on a few more times during the year. We'll chat more about other cases. Could you now, I know a lot of people know what your podcast is, but could you just tell people what your podcast is about?
It's called the Cliff's Edge podcast. So basically, most of the cases we focus on are cold cases, but we kind of cover cases from throughout the world, and then kind of come back to Irish cases every 4 or 5 episodes or so. So it's a bit eclectic, should I say? But we're developing on. I think we're up to 50 episodes, so I'm trying to improve as a host as we go along, learning from you and that, Nules,
Oh God, and I'm still learning too, Ciaran, so don't worry in that department. But guys, listen, check out Ciaran's podcast, The Cliff's Edge, because I'm telling you, it's well worth a listen. He's got
some Nules has been on it twice as well.
Yes, I have been on it twice, but there are plenty more fantastic episodes on it. They're very interesting, so I would urge you all, because if you're listening to me, you obviously love true crime, just go over and follow Ciaran and listen to his podcast, because they're really, really good.
Well, thanks for that, Nules. Thanks for bringing us back on.
Yeah, and we'll see you again soon, Ciaran. Mind yourself.
Great.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So guys, that's it for today's episode of the Ireland Crimes and Mysteries podcast. Again, thanks for your listenership, and don't forget to subscribe to the show and hit that auto download so you never miss an episode. Until the next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious. This podcast has been compiled from information gathered in the public sphere, like news articles, documentaries, and open source material that can be found on the web. Everything in this podcast is alleged unless a conviction has taken place.